For a generation of gamers, the golden age of SpongeBob titles wasn't just a period of time. It was more so a very specific feeling. It was the stupid, tight platforming of Battle for Bikini Bottom and the scale and the cinematic-ness of the movie game, also made by Heavy Iron Studios. These are the titles that proved that licensed games didn't have to be just bargain bin trash. These games were built with love. They were built with mechanical depth, and with the crucial understanding of what made Bikini Bottom tick. But then 2009 happened. It was the 10th anniversary of our beloved Yellow Sponge, and as the 6th generation of consoles faded into its 7th, Heavy Iron Studios, the architects of our childhoods, gave us one final SpongeBob adventure before moving on to other projects. And that game was Truth or Square. It's a game that's often let out of the greatest hits conversation. It didn't redefine the genre, and it certainly didn't top its predecessors. In many ways, it felt like the legendary studio was going out with a whimper. But is worse than the best really the same thing as bad? Well, today that's exactly the question that I'm going to answer. We're going to look back on the Wii version of Truth or Square to see if there's still some secret formula hidden in this forgotten trilogy finale. And a little context, I had never played this game. Up until about 4 or 5 days ago, I have never played it my entire life. I honestly didn't even know that it was made by Heavy Iron Studios. And the fact that it was made by Heavy Iron was the sole reason that I decided to buy this game for my Wii, which was literally like $11 on eBay, free shipping. Good deal. I feel like I got my $11 worth, but that's my context. I did not grow up with this game in the slightest. Now, to understand Truth or Square fully, you have to understand the incredibly large shadow that it was standing in. By 2009, Battle for Bikini Bottom was already a cult classic. That was, 7-8 years before? And the movie game had redefined that engine to near perfection, and so when Truth or Square arrived, it felt different. The scale was much smaller. Instead of sprawling interconnected hubs, we were given a series of memories accessed through the Bob's brain. This was a clip show in game form released to celebrate the show's 10th anniversary, and I did really like all the references. It was a really nice, greatest hits conversation of what had happened in the show up until 2009, and I did appreciate that. And if Battle for Bikini Bottom was a grand feast, then Truth or Square kind of felt like a catered lunch. It was professional, it was definitely edible, but it just lacked the wow factor. The movement felt a little bit heavier, a little bit cheaper. The level design was a lot more linear, and there's no debate about it. And the stakes felt significantly lower. For many of us playing this back to back with the earlier titles, which is true, I just finished the movie game, it made the drop in ambition feel like a betrayal. It felt like Heavy Iron Studios was just checking off boxes rather than breaking new ground. However, it's also worth noting that this is not really Heavy Iron's fault. Nintendo was rushing a deadline, and they did their best. And there are some amazing, again, references, like I've said. Spongehenge shows up in this game. One of my favorite, one of the most misunderstood episodes of the show gets a really cool reference here. I liked it a lot. But here's the thing. All that said, even a lesser Heavy Iron game is still packed with more personality than, I would say, most licensed titles today. What Truth or Square lacked in mechanical innovation, it made up for in pure, unadulterated charm. Because the game is based on memories, the developers had a blank check to get weird. We were doing a lot more than just running through jellyfish fields again. We were seeing early SpongeBob in a prehistoric setting, or a chrome-plated future Bikini Bottom running from a plankton and a giant robot. It was so much fun. The happiness abilities, which turned SpongeBob into a giant hammer or a fan, were really creative ways to iterate on the shape-shifting nature of a sea sponge. It leaned into the cartoon logic more than any previous entry. He wasn't just spinning with a jellyfish net. He was turning into a spatula. He was turning into a hammer. It was cool. And the voice acting mostly hit the right notes. The guy who plays Mr. Krabs, again, it's not Clancy Brown for whatever reason. He wasn't in Battle for Bikini Bottom. He was in the movie game. And then not in Truth or Square for whatever reason. But the guy who plays him here does a much better job than the guy from Battle for Bikini Bottom.
SpongeBob, look sharp, me boy. Tomorrow's a very important day.
They all have the visual style, and again, while not as crisp as, our current SpongeBob games that we're getting, it still had a very colorful, chunky Wii aesthetic that holds up as, you could say, cozy. Now we have to address the elephant in the room, the gameplay loop. These levels are not long, they are very short, they are not hub worlds. Truth or Square leaned heavily into the motion control craze of the era, which I don't love. Spinning the Wiimote to attack felt fine at first, but again, I just hate it. Though I went out and bought a third-party GameCube controller so I could use that. I was over the motion controls. And it just didn't feel good. The combat was also ludicrously repetitive. In a game like this, if the combat was, let's say, fun, I wouldn't mind it. But the combat here, I'm not going to say it's not fun, but it's out of 10, I'd probably give it a 4 or a 5 on the fun scale. It's just not great. You spend a lot of time fighting generic robot variants that really do lack the personality of the original Duplicatotron 3000 bots from BFBB. And the platforming is fine. It's decent, it's functional, it's whatever. But it rarely asks the player to master the mechanics in a way that, Kelp Forest or Rock Bottom did in BFBB. It's a safe game. It's a very safe game. I beat it in just under 5 hours. It's a game that wants you to finish it without too much friction, which is, if you've played the original 2 games, is a far cry from the challenging spatulas of the past. So, where does that leave us? Truth or Square, as cool of a title as it has, is undeniably worse than the 2 titans of licensed gaming fare that came before it. It's shorter, it is far more linear, and it's less inspired. It was the end of an era. It was the final time that Heavy Iron would lead a SpongeBob project. And in that sense, yes, it was, by technicality, a little bit of a whimper. But a whimper from a legend is still a melody that's worth hearing. When you stop comparing it to Battle for Bikini Bottom and look at it as a decent enough standalone anniversary celebration, you find a game that I thought was decent. It's a breezy 5-hour trip down memory lane that captured the heart of the show during its transition into the modern era. It's got the charm, it's got the humor, and for all its flaws, it still feels like a SpongeBob game that was made by people who actually liked and watched SpongeBob. We often live in a world of extremes. Games and movies and really anything, they're all either masterpieces or straight garbage. But Truth or Square lives in that comfortable middle ground. It's the B- student that you can't help but really like. If you grew up with the Wii version, you probably remember the frustration of the motion controls, but you also remember the joy of seeing the world change through SpongeBob's eyes. It wasn't the grand finale that, dare I say, we deserved, but it was a warm, nostalgic hug before the lights went out on the 6th generation of consoles. And honestly, sometimes decent is all you really need.